Good morning and welcome everyone to a customer success webinar. Today we had a little bit of a change of schedule. I apologize for that. We did have the Oracle and AWS on deck, but the schedule changed. That'll be probably looking in July right now. So we moved ahead the schedule to do a presentation on what's new on the VMware Cloud on AWS for May, early June 2019. We have just hit our M7 release, which I think is the last. I guess we still have M8, and then we're going to go to a different nomenclature. But as always, I'm Matt Vandenbeld, vCloud Matt. I also have Zach Zumba with me in the chat. So we're going to go through some of the stuff of what's come up, discuss how it may impact you, and going forward, what might be coming in the pipe. So again, this is as of the May, early June release. We do releases kind of outside of Cadence as well, but these are our major releases where we add a large amount of functionality. I'm not going to go into a large amount of degree. I assume pretty much everybody is familiar with our offering right now, our coupling with the our stack and the AWS stack. So again, I'm not going to go too much into that. I just want to talk a little bit briefly around some of the use cases, just because it gives context for some of the other releases that we have done. So data center extension is probably our most popular use case right now, or data center evacuation, migration, whatever you want to call it. And that's basically moving your VMware estate from your on-premises data center to the cloud. Extremely easy to do. We have a lot of tools around it that can assist in these moves, and we have, like I said, a large amount of customers that have done that. Disaster recovery would be second, which would we have a lot of cool DR offerings. We have a lot of cool partner offerings as well. Definitely some partners you can check out if you're interested in that. We also have our site recovery as a service, which is using our robust SRM software to deliver DR to the cloud. And we're continuing to make things more cost effective in that space as we go forward. And you'll start to see some more announcements around that soon. Cloud migrations, also probably one of the biggest use cases where we move stuff from on-premises to the cloud. And next generation apps. And this is something that I really kind of want to talk about, which is why I want to talk about the slide, is there's a lot of notion out there in the industry that you have to be in AWS or GCP or somewhere to be next generation. That's not true. So VMware has a large amount of products and solutions in this space. We're continuing to expand. It is a major focus of our company right now to be able to do that. And also to develop the infrastructure, and we already have the robust infrastructure that you don't need to redo all of your applications to get advantages such as availability or multi-region or disaster recovery or better performance. So definitely something to keep in mind, that just because you're an EC2 in AWS doesn't necessarily mean you're a next generation app or a cloud app. And there are some applications that are definitely suited for that kind of world. But VMware has a lot of offerings on space and a lot of offerings to support your existing applications as well. Brief slide of a lot of the customers we work with. I've worked with quite a few of the ones on here. Incredibly expanding list of customers. It's really kind of taken off and really resonated in the industry. So something to also focus on is that our roadmap is publicly available. It is on our website. You can see there, cloud.vmware.com/vmc-aws/roadmap. We should probably try to look at shortening that URL a little bit, but all of the stuff is up there. You can sort by what's available, what's planned. You can sort by categories. So we do very much are trying to focus on being very, very open around what we're developing, and soliciting feedback on what you guys would like to see sooner than later, and which features you need to grow your consumption or to get on the stack. We're always open to listen to these and reprioritize based upon demand. So it's always worth, build this slide out here, mentioning that we do 4 kind of classifications for our services. So available means they're available. So it might not be available in all AWS regions. Good example of this is like multi-AZ clusters, just because there's not enough availability zones in certain AWS regions at this time. But available means that everybody can grab it, just consume it. It's there in the portal and ready to go. Preview is we're basically ready to go, but we've released it only to a few customers to make sure that we've vetted it all out, to make sure that we have all the kinks worked out so that we can make it available for everybody and everybody doesn't have an issue when they consume it. Developing, so it is what it sounds like. We're actively developing it and testing it internally. And planned means, we're thinking about it. We acknowledge we have a need for it, and we're figuring out how to do it and planning it for future development. So it's always good to kind of know those categories because we will use these terms as we go forward, and you'll see it all on the roadmap as well. So just one last caveat is feature status is document or subject to change. That's our standard disclaimer. So what's new? So we've added 3 additional regions. So Mumbai, Sao Paulo, and Seoul are all up and running now. So it says in May and early June, but they are now all available. We are continuing to work forward on our plan to be in all AWS regions as soon as feasible. And we're stepping our way around it now. I think that we have one in pretty much every major region in the world at this point. And we'll be continuing to expand upon that. We've also allowed our Elastic vSAN plus our Amazon EC2 R5 metal. So we refer to this as our R5 host. So this is that EBS-backed storage. And we have also added the proactive scale-up and critical cluster storage utilization. So this is something we're going to continue to add more advancements over. We're going to go over all these in a little bit more detail as we go. But that allows... the future is going to allow more granularity for when you choose to scale up and scale down, especially around CPU and memory. Currently, right now, it's around storage, and this is to ensure that your environment is available and high performing. Stretch cluster enhancements. So we've added some things around stretch clusters. We made R5 available for multi-AZ clusters, as we call it. So you'll hear us kind of interchangeably have stretch clusters and multi-AZ clusters, but they're the same thing. And also you can have now multiple stretch clusters of i3 currently. We've put in some more compute policies, so VM affinity rules and VM to host anti-affinity rules. This could help with workload designations and stuff like that, and potentially some licensing things as well. And we've added some maintenance window enhancements. This is something that's been asked for quite a while. We've been working on for quite a while. There's a lot of complexity in our back end to make sure that we can accommodate everybody. So this is now finally made into the product. There's been a large amount of NSXT enhancements, and will continue to always be a large amount of NSXT enhancements as we continue to grow the offering. And this one I don't believe actually made it in yet, but we could talk about it, and that's a flexible vCenter permission model for custom roles and privileges, so the ability to create your own roles within Virtual Center. Again, you cannot create the administrator role, but you can create basically everything up to cloud admin to give you a little more granularity. There was an unfortunate side effect that happened out of some of this that we're still trying to work out before I think we make this available to everybody. So again, I mentioned South America, Asia Pacific, Mumbai, Sao Paulo has been launched. So like I said, you can see that we got a pretty good expanse around the globe now, so that there is a good chance that you can get into close to your consumers, and we are continuing to drive that forward as we go farther. And like I said, so U.S. West and Canada does not have stretch cluster support, nor does Seoul and Sao Paulo at this point, and that's a limitation on the AWS side that we'll continue to work with them around to add that functionality in the future. So we've talked about this for a long time, but the EBS and R5 is finally available. It's not available in all regions currently, but a decent amount of where most of our customers are currently. So this allows you to have a lot more storage consumption or storage available per host in your AWS or VMC on AWS cluster. So what this does is it comes in range and capacity from 15 to 35 terabytes right now, and that's in 5 terabyte increments. It's selectable as you create the cluster. You cannot modify it currently at this time after you create the cluster. So if you go with 15 terabytes to start, every host you add will be 15 terabytes. If you go to 35 terabytes, every host you add will be 35 terabytes, and there's no way to change that. Current time is on our roadmap to be able to modify that, as well as going up to 70 terabytes per host as well. So that is something that's still coming. It's basically GP2 storage on the backside. It's good performing. It's not definitely as fast as the NVMe storage and the i3s, but it's a good middle ground for workloads that require more capacity. The R5 middle hosts are a little bit bigger as well from a memory footprint and CPU footprint as well. So they're kind of generally all around a bigger host than the current i3s. We have faster remediation of host failures. And the first cluster now in an SDDC can be an R5. So before we had a limitation where you had to have an i3 cluster first, then any cluster after that in the SDDC could be R5s. Now it can be the first cluster, and all of your clusters can be R5 if you so desire. And it does, one of the things that big reason we put it in is it does lower the cost for disaster recovery use case, as you could have more capacity per host so that you could have less amount of hosts, especially when you're not in a DR event and then rapidly scale up as you go forward. We talked about this a little bit. So currently right now, customers are advised to use no more than 70%. So you'll actually get an alert when you reach that at 70%, 75%, we automatically add another host for you. Again, this is to ensure the functionality of the environment and to reduce your risk for data loss in any way, capacity. And you can see that we have some kind of default numbers right now. You can optimize for best performance, optimize for lower cost. And that just basically changes how fast we will add a host and how slowly we'll remove a host. And so those are all configurable. And you can also set your minimum cluster size and your maximum cluster size as well. Now, bear in mind, again, that we will go above that maximum cluster size if you reach that critical storage number. Again, and this is to ensure your data is safe and everything is performing correctly. We talked about this a little bit as well, stretch clusters, so now you can have the R5 as well. The biggest change is you could have multiple stretch clusters per SDDC right now. Before we were limited to one, so you always had to kick in another SDDC, which kind of complex things up a little bit. And we added the support for customer CPU core counts, so I should probably say custom CPU core counts, to reduce some licensing considerations, especially for things of the availability. So we do highly recommend the multiple AZ cluster for workloads that have a high availability requirement. This means that if for whatever reason one of the AWS availability zones drops, all of your workloads will HA over to the other side, or maybe already over there, depending on how you've set up your architectures, and will be either up and running within a very short order, 5 to 10 minutes, or will have maintained running. There is a little bit of a premium for the price of it, and you have to have 6 hosts to start off with. But it's definitely something to look at if you need a high availability, and the application architecture in and of itself does not provide that for you. Maintenance window selection. So again, this is one that was very frequently requested. So you could actually go into this window, and you can see at the bottom of this slide here, the maintenance window preference setting. It has a change there. You could actually pick, and it's not completely open. There is selections for days and times, so you can get pretty close to whatever you really need. But it's not like a free form where you can kind of exactly put in your exact minute, but it is pretty open, and it is pretty accessible, and it's in the maintenance window on each SDDC, so it's definitely something I recommend customers to look at if they haven't already. And also, when you can see now that we're going to be publishing the upcoming maintenances, and you can reschedule. There's only a certain amount of times you can reschedule before we will actually say, sorry, we're going to have to do this, and this is to, this is the cloud world, so that we have to ensure that all of our stacks are running the same code, and get everybody up to the latest and greatest to ensure functionality across the board. But you can do some reschedules if that's perhaps, in this example, December 22nd, if you're a e-commerce site, this might be a very popular time for people getting those last minute gifts and kind of thing. So you could defer it during that time to get it to something that's a little bit better for you. So we've added quite a few enhancements around our NSX, particularly around connectivity, some security, and visibility. So this one is a nice one as well. So we have EACMP with route-based IPsec VPN now. So this is one thing that was very frequently requested to us, was to allow ECMP support for route-based. So a little bit of traffic not performance necessarily. It could give you better performance, but optimizes your network traffic, and perhaps a better utility so that you can get the best use out of multiple uplinks that you have potentially going to VMware Cloud on AWS. So this is a pretty big benefit. It allows you to connect to things like the Amazon Transit Gateway as well. So this is a fairly big functionality increase, and something that we've looked at for quite a while, and we'll continue to expand upon our routing protocols and what we can make available to optimize the network connectivity to VMware Cloud on AWS. And it also adds some resiliency as well, as now you can have multiple uplinks as opposed to the one. So you could also, this is also a very popular request that we've had, is to have a standby link. So you could have an active direct connect via private VIF connected in, but we had quite a few customers that were concerned around what would happen if, for whatever reason, that direct connect became unavailable or there's issues with it. Well, now you can have a standby route-based IPsec VPN, so that if something were to happen or whatever to your direct connect, you could initiate the connection on the route-based VPN and keep running in a very quick order as before, where you would kind of have to tear down the direct connect potentially and set up a VPN on the fly. So now all of this can be done. Now it's for non-ESX and non-vMotion traffic, so it won't help you if you're doing migrations and such. But if for whatever reason you're direct connecting, you're having issues, that's probably one of your lower concerns. Your primary concern is just to maintain connectivity to your environment and to your applications, and this standby VPN facilitates that for you. DHCP relay. This is also one of the most requested features in there, is the NSX DHCP on the logical segments was not very robust. It didn't have a lot of options. Michael Kolos and some other members of our team wrote a fantastic article about how to actually deploy a DHCP proxy within the SDDC to get around a lot of these issues. But now we've essentially just added a part of the interface in the network and security section to specify your own DHCP. So now we essentially just do a DHCP relay to your own on-prem DHCP, which you control with all kinds, with whatever settings that you need to have in there. So this is primarily just a pure functionality increase type update, which I highly recommend everybody to look at if you are doing DHCP in VMware Cloud and AWS. If you have a Horizon use case especially, this definitely makes things a lot easier, and is just a screen on our like I said, our network and security page, where you could just enter the information for where your DHCP server resides. But it's actually, for such a little small change, it has a really massive impact for a lot of the functionality of people's environments, and I'm really glad that this one made it in. We talked a little bit about the new compute policies add, so VM to VM anti-affinity rules, and there is already affinity rules in there, and VM to host affinity rules and anti-affinity rules. I think these are actually reversed in this slide. You can also disable DRS vMotion in every case except when we do maintenance. Obviously, if we do maintenance, we need to evacuate a host, but there is certain licensing models that can benefit from that. It's great that we're adding this. Not a lot of customers actually use affinity rules for DRS. It's kind of been a feature that's been widely ignored for a very long time, but it's a very, very robust feature. If you have two applications that run together, if you have an application, a database server, obviously you could put these in a VM to VM affinity group and keep them together to get as much performance as possible out of it, which, offers a lot of advantages. Or an anti-affinity rule that says, these two applications are, it's a SQL cluster, for example. So it doesn't make sense to have both VMs of a SQL cluster on the same host. So you can have the anti-affinity rules and VM host anti-affinity rules. And affinity rules. You can actually say, back in the old days, we used to put pin vCenter with a preferred rule onto host one. So if everything failed in the data center or whatever, and I had to start up things, I knew that when I started up host one, that's where my vCenter should be. So that was an example. Doesn't really apply to this use case, but you can start to think that there are other workloads you could do about that. And a lot of this is around licensing considerations. So that's the primary use case for most anti-affinity rules for a VM to host relationship. But we are continuing to expand on it, and I think this basically offers the expanse of what we have for those DRS rules. But as the caveat, we do, in certain instances, like the disable DRS vMotion, kind of violate that to do our maintenance because that's something that is required. So I talked about this. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure if this is actually in as of now. It's going to begin very shortly once we figure out a thing or two on our end. But this is an important update because it does allow, you can see here in the slide, the creation of a new role. So this is something that was kind of talked about for a long time, that we don't have extremely granular permissions within vCenter. You could use any of the established roles within it, and we did actually have a pretty robust list of built-in roles, but not everybody consumed vCenter in that way. I'd say actually probably the majority of people did not consume vCenter that way. They usually created their own roles with their very granular permissions. So we have enabled that. Again, you can't go above what Cloud Admin does today, but you can do things like create a read-only user, although there is kind of one already in there, or create a group of application users and assign it to a specific folder so that they can have certain rights to that folder and nowhere else, and break things out to these degrees that you're kind of used to in your on-prem world. But we're offering that now into the cloud, and it gives you a little bit, definitely some more flexibility for what you can do. And this is a very highly demanded feature and should be coming very soon. So I always like to put this up here, get started with VMware Cloud and AWS, production 3 host SDDC for the price of 2, and that's till August 2nd, 2019. So that's a good deal if everybody wants to get in it. You can scan that to get into the offers. Lots of information out here. There's a website. This will go up on our YouTube as well. And like I said, we're continuing to continuously always update and add functionality and fix things, and so absolutely, if you have any features or anything that's perhaps preventing you, or just a quality of life thing, or again, especially if it's preventing you from coming onto the platform or preventing you from expanding on the platform, let us know. You can either tweet at VMware Cloud AWS or at vCloudMatt, or you can email us at cloudcs@vmware.com. And we do take that feedback very seriously. We do look at a lot of it. We do modify our roadmaps based upon what has come up and what the customers are looking for, and what will enable us to better serve our customers out there. So absolutely all the feedback. We have, like I said, lots of information out there. Highly recommend the hands-on labs if you just kind of want to kick the tires and see what it looks like. We do have our own YouTube channel here. It's not listed on this one, but it's youtube.com. I think it's like /c/VMware Cloud Customer Success, which this video will go up there. So I've been rambling for quite a long time, and I'll do a brief pause to see if there is any questions or comments out there. And if not, I think we can actually call this part fairly short. And work on if anybody has any more questions or any other open questions that they may have. So again, I guess with a lack of questions, we will be having our Oracle on AWS presentation probably about a month from now. Again, we're always open to ideas for stuff that we're looking at. We're going to have a Horizon session on VMC coming up very shortly as well. That is on our roadmap. We will be back here next week for regular office hours, and we will be having our APJ office hours at a regular time on Thursday. So I appreciate everybody's time and for coming out, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the future. Thank you very much.